Hey there, this is Lauren Budgets. I'm Lauren, so let's talk about budgets. Today I want to talk you through my payday routine and what I do each time I'm paid. I have a full-time job that pays twice per month, so I'm paid on the 15th and the last day of the month. And I like to split my monthly bills evenly across those two paychecks. So I'm going to show you kind of how I've shifted into this budgeting style and what exactly I do with my money every single payday. Let's dig into it. So, the first thing I want to describe for you is my money flow and where my money goes and how I transfer it. I have a total of 5 accounts, maybe a little bit more. We'll count them together. So, number one, I have my checking accounts, and I have two checking accounts. The first is my personal checking account where all of my direct deposit goes. And the second is my joint checking account with my husband that we use to pay bills. Now, before he became a stay at home dad, we would equally contribute or share the contributions into this bill pay checking account. But now that I'm the sole provider, really I'm the only one adding money to this account. Then I have two high yield savings accounts that holds my sinking funds and short term savings. And my emergency fund is really barely funded because I'm really focused on paying down debt. So I have about half a month's of bills in my emergency fund, plus about $22,000 in my sinking funds altogether. And then I have two credit cards, and I put all of my spending on credit cards and then pay it off each time that I'm paid. So I make two credit card payments every month, once on the 15th and once on the last day of the month. This handles my groceries, my gas, any of my shopping, and actually quite a few of my subscriptions and bills end up on my credit cards because I'm trying to accrue as many points as I can. The last account that I'm not really going to dig into today because it's not a part of my payday routine, but it does exist, is I do have a 401k through my work. So now, every time I'm paid, all of that money is deposited into my checking account and it's added to whatever is currently in that account left over from the last pay period. So on June 15th, the day of my payday, my two checking accounts were at $1,318.62 and $5,392.82, leaving me a total of about $6,700 to budget with. The first thing I have to do, or I choose to do with that pay, is to pay off my credit cards in full. So on my two credit card balances, I had $2,575 and $246.41. So really that's almost $3,000 of groceries, shopping, gas, medical bills, subscriptions, all of my day-to-day spending that gets paid off in full. This left me with a balance of $2,571.44 in my personal checking account. Next, I'm going to make a transfer from my checking account into my bill pay account. And at this point, I want to show you my paycheck tracking spreadsheet that I developed in Google Sheets and sell on Etsy. And I'm going to show you how I fill this out and where all that money goes. Okay, so now we're in my spreadsheet. And these numbers that you see are actually the presets. So the first thing I do is, well, I actually don't do this every pay period, but anytime my income or my expenses are going to change, for example, my car insurance went up and I had to change my plan. So I have this planner page, and on it, I input my paycheck amount. Actually, look at that. I didn't fix it with my new one. So I enter my paycheck amount, all of my fixed monthly bills, my debt minimum payments, my spending, my sinking funds, and it gives me like a nice little summary. Then I get to the duplicate page, and on this page, I can see kind of a more nitty gritty detail of what's coming out of every paycheck. So my planner is like my entire month overview, broken down, and then my paycheck tracker is where I'm actually going to record my expenses and I'm going to check off my payday routine. So in this, I kind of plan what my generic budget is. So every 2 weeks or so on OutSchool, I've been making $2,000. Now that it's summer, that number is going to decrease dramatically. And at the same time, for the spring, I was making $455 every 2 weeks from my college course. Now I'm teaching my summer course, and this value is actually going to go up. And then other is for any other income I have, like my TikTok income, my Etsy income, refunds that I get from returning items, things like that. So now we get into it. You duplicate this paycheck, you enter in your new date, and that takes you to the June 15th spreadsheet. And this June 15th spreadsheet is really just a copy of what the other one was, preloaded with all those things that you think that you're going to have. Now, this is really where I start my payday routine, is in this planner. So I'm going to go over to the income category, and I'm going to update all of the income I've received from my last full-time paycheck until today's paycheck. And so today's pay, my full-time pay, is kind of what I base the tracker on. And so that's my paycheck amount in the top left corner. But then over in the expense tracker, I add in all of that additional income. So I received 2 paydays from Outschool, 1 payday from the community college, and then I actually received my TikTok pay on the 15th as well. So these values need to be added to my spreadsheet. I had predicted $227, but I actually got paid $224.20 from TikTok. I made $968.09 from community college. And then from Outschool, I made $440.30, $664.30. So I put those into my budget. This is the money that I have to work with this pay period. Then I adjust my budget numbers to match my actual income numbers. So I'm going to decrease that Outschool pay. I made half of what I expected, and that's actually normal for me for the summer. And then I enter my TikTok pay, and I can see that I have $547 left to budget. Then we're going to go through each of my categories and just make sure that all of the numbers make sense. So my grocery is $600. I typically spend $1,200 to $1,500 on groceries, so this really is a low goal, and if I go over, I will have to make some adjustments. For restaurants, I have $100 budgeted. Shopping is $125. Gas is $75. Pets are $75. Fun is $50. Medical is $50. Mom, dad, and the kids each get $50. These are those spending categories that I set up on my monthly budget, now copied over into my paycheck budget, and then split equally between my 2 paychecks. The only thing I see on here that I really need to change is that I still have money planned for swim lessons, but we're not doing those monthly swim lessons anymore because it is summer swim season, and we're able to do it a lot cheaper at our local pool. Subscriptions for $65, and then my medical bills are $186.52. Because I run all of my spending on credit cards, some of the things in the spending category are actually debts or bills, but they come off of my credit card. And this spending credit card category is where I'm going to plan how much money I need for those credit card payments that I do every payday. So in total, I am planning to put $1,500 on my credit card this next pay period. For holidays and vacations, I am going on vacation, but I've changed my system recently where I used to pre-plan how much I thought I would spend in that and then take it out of my sinking fund at that planning stage. But then my actual spending was never exactly what my planned spending was. And so I'm switching that. I'm going to be going on vacation in this pay period. And I have $700 saved for this vacation. But instead of putting that into my budget right now, I'm going to let the vacation play it out because all of my spending goes on credit card. And then I'm going to adjust my sinking funds after the fact. Then we go into the bills. And I think for me, this system works really well. I'm going to explain it to you. The bills category are my fixed monthly expenses that are coming out of my bill checking account, that joint account that I share with my husband. And I'm going to show you my bill calendar just so you can see what I'm talking about, because 97% of my bills are due before my first paycheck of the month. So I get paid on the 15th. 97% of my bills are due before that. They're the 1st through the 14th or even on the 15th. And if I were trying to pay all of those bills from my paycheck on the last day of the previous month, I would have nothing left in my account to cover any unexpected expenses or withdrawals from my checking accounts. This is one of the reasons I switched to using credit card, but it was also the inspiration for this budgeting system that I use now. Instead of trying to pay all the bills that are due in that pay period with that paycheck, I am just going to set aside half of all of my bills from both of my paychecks, put it in my bill checking account, and then let it sit. Just let it float. Now, this did require me getting that month ahead fund that I talked about a little bit at the beginning of the video. So first I had to kind of build up my bill checking account so that it never went into the negative. Now I just coast. I just transfer the same amount every pay period, and I'm left with the same amount left over every pay period from my fixed income. So back to the spreadsheet. I can see in my totals that I need $1,042.70 for all of my bills, and that's going to cover half of my mortgage, half of my utilities, half of my car payment. My car payment is technically a debt, so I could move that. Actually, let's move that right now. I haven't made a change in a long time. We're going to move the car payment into the debt category. I'm going to move all this up. Bills and debts both come from the same account, so this isn't going to change anything with my routine and how I transfer money. All right, so now if I'm on June 15th, I have $610 left to budget. If I am going to put that into my extra debt payment. So I'm going to schedule all $600 as an extra debt payment. Right now, my focus is to pay off my debt, so why not? And then that leaves me with $10, and I'm just going to put that into my month ahead sinking fund. This makes this budget zero based, which is really important to me, and it's something I learned by using the application You Need a Budget. It's a subscription I still pay for because it really helped me get into the habit of looking towards being a month ahead, making sure every dollar is accounted for, and really making sure I get to that zero based budget. If I look at all my numbers, now I'm ready to really dig into my payday routine and start transferring my money. So I am going to go ahead and check off all of the bills and all of the debts except the extra debt payment, which I'm not going to make until the end of this pay period when I see that my spending fits in my allotment and that I can afford that full extra payment. So by checking all of those off in the actual categories, I can see how much I actually need to transfer into my joint checking account to pay for my bills. So that's $1,199.78. I'm going to make that transfer right now of $1,200. After doing that, I'm going to have left into my personal checking account $1,390.66, and our joint account where we pay our bills from is going to have $2,518.62. So far in our payday routine, we've summed up all of our income, we've filled out our budget planning spreadsheet, we've paid off our credit cards and all of our spending for that past pay period, and we've transferred the money into our bill checking account that we need to cover all of our bills for the next pay period. Finally, we're ready to look at our sinking funds. And so the sinking funds is my absolute favorite budgeting technique. What I was doing before I started paying attention to my budget 2 years ago was basically a cycle of debt. So I would follow my budget, and if something big came down the road, like Christmas or a birthday or anything else, like a vacation, I would just charge it to my credit card and pay it off later. And this was the point in my life where I thought I could afford something if I could afford the minimum credit card payment. I was not paying attention to the interest that accrued or the fact that I was just digging myself deeper and deeper into debt. Now I know that I would rather not put these things on my credit card unless I can afford to pay them off in full. So I started saving. And from every paycheck, I put a little bit away for Christmas. I put a little bit away for taxes, birthdays, annual fees, anything I know that's going to come up as a bigger purchase later in my life. I want to have money ready to go for that. So, for example, we just had to get some tires replaced. I have a vehicle fund, and that paid for my tires. So that couple $100 was not a burden on my day-to-day spending. So here's my sinking funds. My taxes, I calculate as 25% of my outschool income because that is 1099 contract work. It's not taxed yet. There's taxes not automatically withdrawn, I mean. And then I also put away half of my TikTok money because I just don't trust it yet. I've only had 2 TikTok paydays and I don't know what that's going to look like come tax season. So what I like about this spreadsheet and something I'm really developing and testing right now is if I check these off, it's going to tell me how much is left in those sinking funds once I make these transfers into my high yield savings account. Now, the only categories I'm not going to check off are self-care, which I don't fund until the end of the pay period, and month ahead because I don't want to fund it until I know what my spending is going to look like for this. So I've checked off all the categories that I do include, and this tells me that I need to transfer $1,227.10 from my checking account into my high yield savings account. Now, here's where the budgeting gets a little ugly and is something that I'm still kind of working on as a system, because last pay period, and we're looking at last pay period now, but last pay period, I ended up overspending by about $211.92. And so what I had to do was reduce my extra debt payment by that $211. And so I had originally wanted to put 400 away towards debt. I could only put about 200 towards debt. Also in last pay period, I had transferred $400 from my checking account into my sinking funds to meet my planned sinking fund values. But then you can see these negatives right here. I actually needed money from my sinking funds to cover some of my expenses. So I had some things come up that needed to come out of my sinking funds, like some vacation spending, some birthday spending, things like that. And so that extra payment wasn't accounted for. And so I transferred over $400 into my high yield savings account, and then I had to withdraw $400. And instead of actively withdrawing that money, what I typically do is just withhold it from the next pay period. So instead of transferring the $1,227.10 that this pay period says I need to transfer, I'm only going to transfer $745.14, which is subtracting all of the money I had to take out of sinking funds last pay period, and just kind of mediating that difference. After making this transfer, I now have $645.52 in my personal account, and this is how much is going to be there until my next payday routine. And then in my joint checking account where we pay our bills and our debts, I'm going to take that extra $212.66 debt payment, and I'm going to apply that to my student loans because those are currently my debts with the highest interest rate. That's going to leave us $2,305.96 in our joint account until our next payday routine. Thanks for watching my payday routine, and I will see you guys again on June 30th when I go through the payday routine all over again with my next paycheck.